Welcome to Practical Phishing Assessments, the free edition. Now, this course is the exact same course that was available on TCM Academy and Udemy, but I decided to pull the course down from those platforms because I'm no longer working as a penetration tester as my day job. I've moved on to other portions of security, so I can't keep this course updated as much as I would like. My initial thought when I created this course was that I was going to kind of update it every month or so with new techniques I was learning and new tools, and kind of talk about some different bypasses that have been implemented. But again, since I'm no longer doing phishing engagements every month, that's not something I can reliably do. So there's a few things with this course. One, this is the exact same course. I'm just uploading it for free for anyone who wants to watch it. And I've split it up into a few different sections, so this will be split up into roughly 3 different parts. I have also taken down the course Discord that is mentioned in the beginning half of this course, and again, that's mostly because since I'm not doing phishing engagements full time, I can't help people troubleshoot a lot of the things that are going wrong because, I'm not running into those same issues as I was back when I released this course. The final thing that I would like to mention with this course is that if you are new to security or you're new to conducting phishing assessments and you're not actively doing it for a security company, you don't necessarily need to follow along and create all the accounts and kind of run the campaign to actually learn something from it. In fact, I think if you just were to take notes and not take notes on the specific tools, but take notes more on the techniques, you'll learn a lot from it, and you'll be able to talk about it in interviews, or you'll be able to actually use this to kind of figure out how to run your own phishing engagements depending on what your clients need. With that out of the way, I hope that you enjoy Practical Phishing Assessments. Welcome to the Practical Phishing Assessments course. My name is Graham Helton. Now, the reason I created this course is there's not a whole lot of information out there on how to actually conduct a phishing campaign. So in this course, I'm going to go over everything you will need to conduct a red team phishing assessment that will be able to capture usernames and passwords, as well as bypass two-factor authentication. Now, I wanted to give a little bit of background on who I am before I get into the course prerequisites and give you a brief overview of what you're going to see in this course. So the first thing, like I said before, my name is Graham Helton. I have a bachelor's in cybersecurity. My day job is a penetration tester, and I do some other security researcher type stuff on the side. A lot of that can be found on grahamhelton.com. I also have some other certifications to my name. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can find me at grahamhelton3. Next, I wanted to give a brief overview of what you will get out of this course. So the first is a full life cycle of a phishing engagement. So I will teach you how to do everything from researching your target using open source intelligence all the way to reporting your findings to your client to provide maximum value. Next, I have a little bit of advice from blue teams and also some different tools that you can use as a blue teamer. Next, I really want to focus on the techniques in this course and not the specific tools. With that being said, I will teach you how to configure each part of a phishing campaign using AWS. I've used AWS in the past for real phishing campaigns, and it works great. Next up, I want to talk about some advice that I've taken away from phishing engagements that I've done in real life, and just some lessons learned that I've taken away from those. And then finally, like I said, I want to show you how to report your findings in a meaningful way that will actually help your client use the information that you're recommending to their advantage. Next, I want to go over time and cost considerations. So the only thing that you really need to worry about from a cost perspective is, first of all, buying the domain. Typically, those are $12 for a year, so not too expensive there. And then the other infrastructure cost that you will have to worry about is your EC2 instance. Now, for my purposes, I typically only use the cheapest EC2 instance. I haven't ever found a need to go above that. But depending on how long your campaign is active is going to depend on how much money you're putting into your EC2 instance. So I just use the free tier. So typically it costs me between $0 and $10. It really just depends on how long your campaign is going for and how long your EC2 instance is active for. The next part is the timeline. I like to start my phishing engagements a week or two before the engagement start date. That way I have time to set up everything in the background, research a domain, and also it allows AWS time to actually verify our domain, because sometimes that can take a couple of days. Next, I want to talk about some legal/ethical considerations that you need to be aware of before conducting a phishing campaign. So the first big thing is this is very illegal if you don't have a company's written consent. If you're just following along this course and you start sending phishing emails to a company that you haven't signed a contract with, they very well could sue you and bad things could happen. So make sure that if you are following along with this course just to learn and you're not an actual penetration tester who has signed a contract with a company, make sure you're only phishing domains that you own and you're only doing it for testing purposes to learn. Next, if you are a penetration tester and you have signed a contract with a company and they know that you're going to be doing a penetration test, make sure that phishing is in scope. You don't want to be in a situation where they think that they're getting a network pen test and they might not expect to be phished, and all of a sudden you're sending them all these emails and you've captured a bunch of their credentials. And finally, with great power comes great responsibility. Always keep your client in mind. It's very possible that you will capture credentials of a CEO or someone that you will be on the call with when reporting your findings. So always keep your client in mind, and keep in mind that your goal of a phishing assessment is not to show how awesome of a hacker you are, but to prove risk to your client. Next, I want to talk about how to get support for this course. So if you head on over to this Discord channel that I've created, you can head over to the Support for Practical Phishing Assessments channel, and you can post any questions that you have in that channel, and I or other students can help you work through them. There's also a bunch of other tabs for different topics, everything from career advice to linking with other students on LinkedIn. Finally, I want to thank you for purchasing this course and going through it with me. I hope that you find it super useful in your phishing engagements. I wanted to make an update video detailing all the changes I'm going to be making for the Practical Phishing Assessments course and what I'm going to be releasing in the first major update to the course. So the first thing is this course released about a month and a half ago, maybe 2 months ago, and the support has been overwhelmingly positive. So I just want to say thank you for that. It's been really cool to see all the different students come through and answer their questions on the Discord. And yeah, so with that being said, the one major problem that I've seen over and over from people who have gone through the course is they're having issues with Amazon simple email services. So these couple videos right here are giving students the most problems, not because there's anything wrong with it. It's just working with AWS and actually moving out of the sandbox is kind of difficult if you've never done it before. And even if you have, a lot of students are saying, hey, I'm doing everything right, but Amazon's not letting me move out the sandbox. So my solution to that is move completely away from Amazon and their web services and move to this service called Mailgun. Now, Mailgun is not affiliated with Amazon at all, and all they do is email. So I've actually found that it's much easier to use Mailgun to send out these emails because email is all they do. It's not kind of cobbled together with the rest of the web services like AWS's. So Mailgun offers you a lot of different options for sending emails from your domain. And with that being said, there are a few other updates I'm making, but most of them are minor. So if you see me refer to AWS at one point in this course and Amazon SES, just know that that is going to be replaced with Mailgun. Welcome to the Researching Your Target portion of this course. Now, I've went ahead and stood up this phishingincorporated.com, and in this course, they're going to serve as our client company. Now, for example purposes, we're going to say that this company has signed a rules of engagement with us, and they would like us to try to phish them. The first thing you should always do is you should go and research your target. Now, if you come to this site, you can see that the way that they speak on this site is probably how they're going to speak in an email. It might be a little more professional, but the way a technology company communicates is going to be much different than how a mom and pop shop might communicate. So it's very important to learn how your target communicates. If we actually come to this About tab, you can see that they list the first and last name of some of their employees. This will prove super useful in the future because we can take these names, put first name dot last name if that's their email schema, which we'll figure out later, and essentially just generate a target list. Now if we come to this Route 53 on AWS, this is where you can buy domains, and they're typically super cheap, around $12 a year, $1 a month, so not very expensive. And what I like to do is I like to put in my target's domain, and then I like to see what variations of this domain I can change, but still make it look legitimate. One thing I like to do is change the letter I to an L. We can see that that domain's available, but you can notice that this domain right here looks very similar to our client's domain. It just looks like a capital I. This is one of the most important parts of your phishing campaign, because if someone is suspicious, they'll probably look at the domain, and if they think everything's normal, they might be enticed to actually put in their credentials. Now, if you want to be a little more sneaky, you can actually come to this website, altcodeunicode.com, and you can look at different variations of letters such as A, E, O, U, Y that have different accent marks. So what you can actually do is you can buy a domain with one of these accent mark characters. For example, say we have youtube.com. Obviously, we can't set up a malicious web server on that domain because it already exists. Google already owns it. But what we can do is we can come down here and we can say, hey, this Latin small letter E with a dot below it, let's copy that and put it into Route 53, and we can check that, and that domain is actually available. So you can get super sneaky on how you choose your domain, but as long as you have a domain that looks very, very similar, then you should be good for the first portion of setting up your phishing campaign. One of the tools we'll be using in our phishing campaign is called GoFish. Now I want to give a brief overview of what GoFish is, what it does, and what we will be using it for. So first of all, GoFish is an open source phishing framework. You can learn more about it at their website, getgofish.com, but essentially it makes it very easy to set up sending templates and targets. It will be the dashboard where we will be launching our campaign, and it will also allow us to track our results. So we'll be able to see how many emails were sent, how many were opened, how many clicked on the link, and how many actually submitted data. Now, GoFish is an open source project. You can find it on GitHub, and I'll be walking you through how to install GoFish in just a moment, but I want to give you a brief overview of what it actually looks like when you set it up. So this is the main dashboard that you'll come to. This is the admin panel. This isn't what any Phish users are going to see. This is just for you managing your campaign. So obviously we don't have any campaigns yet, so there's no statistics on our dashboard, but once we come in here and create a new campaign, you'll be able to see all the statistics of who's clicked your emails, who's submitted credentials, and more information like that. Next, we have this users and groups tab, and if you click new group, this is essentially who you're going to be sending your emails to. Next up, we have the email templates, and this is actually what your email will look like when it arrives in an inbox. You can just send plain text, but you can also get fancy and come in here and create something in HTML so it looks a little bit more legitimate. You'll also see that you can add a tracking image that will allow you to track when the email is actually opened. Next up, we have the landing page. Now, the landing page is what page you'll see when you click on the link in the email. And we won't actually be using this because the technique we'll use another tool called Evil Engine X2, and we'll use our own custom landing page. So we won't be using this, but if you wanted to send a simpler phish, or you didn't want to set up Evil Engine X2, or whatever the case may be, you can come in here and you can actually capture passwords and set up your own fake landing page. Next up, we have the sending profile. So the sending profile is who the email is going to be coming from. So you'll likely want this to be coming from maybe the IT administrator at the organization or someone higher up who will actually be sending out the email. Of course, this will be spoofed from our domain that we previously purchased, but it should look pretty legitimate when it comes into their email inbox. And then lastly, we have some account settings you can change just to make sure no one else can get into this admin panel. So that's it for the kind of walkthrough and overview of GoFish. And next up, we'll be looking at Evil Engine X2 and how that is set up and configured. I wanted to give a super quick overview of a tool we will be using called Evil Engine X2. Now, Evil Engine X2 is a man-in-the-middle attack framework that can be used for phishing login credentials with session cookies. Now, what that means is Evil Engine X2 is essentially sitting in between the communication between our victim and the legitimate Microsoft login page that will be displayed. What this allows us to do is we'll be able to capture not only username and password, but we will also be able to capture the session cookies, which we can then set on our own browser and successfully authenticate as the victim. Now, I highly recommend coming to this blog. It's written by the guy who actually developed this tool, and it gives a lot of insight onto how this tool works and some other use cases that you can use this for. So with that, we'll actually be getting into setting up this tool in a later video. I wanted to talk a little bit about running a phishing campaign out of the cloud and why I chose to use AWS. Now, like I said in the beginning of this course, you're free to use any platform you choose. You can use Azure for this, you can use DigitalOcean, you can use AWS. They all have their different pros and cons. Personally, I prefer AWS because it's kind of a one-stop shop for everything that we'll need, and I'm most comfortable using AWS. So, the first thing we'll need in AWS is a Route 53 domain. And what that basically means is Route 53 is where you can purchase domains from Amazon. So, as you saw earlier in the course, we bought the fishinginc.com domain, and this allows us to create DNS records. Now, this will be super helpful in the future because we'll be adding our own custom DNS records, but we'll get into that later. The next thing you're going to want is an Amazon EC2 instance. An EC2 instance is essentially just a server. And this server is going to be what's hosting Evil Engine X, and it's also going to be hosting GoFish. This server is actually what our victims are going to be connecting to. Next, this is optional, but you can actually configure an Amazon S3 bucket to receive emails to your domain. Now, what this allows you to do is say you email, John Smith at fishinginc.com, and he responds back to your email and says, I don't know, something along the lines of, hey, I put my credentials in, I think I fixed everything. Can you double check? Now, what this will allow you to do is this will allow you to read that email and more or less confirm that he's put credentials in. Next up, we have Amazon SES, or Simple Email Service. And what this is going to allow us to do is actually verify our spoof domain, this fishinginc.com, but inc spelled with an L. It's going to allow us to verify that domain and allow us to send email from it. And with that, that's pretty much everything you need from an AWS standpoint. I know that you can do things like this in Azure or DigitalOcean, but again, you're free to use those, but I'm most comfortable in AWS. Creating a list of targets to send your phishing campaign to is one of the most important steps in creating a phishing campaign, but it's also one of the easiest. So I'm going to walk you through some of the things that I've done to clients in the past where I've generated my own target list of all the employees that work at the company. So the first thing to note is just come to the target's webpage. 9 times out of 10, they have at least some of their employees who work there listed on their webpage. So I've seen companies that have just their executives on the About page. I've seen companies that have their entire company on the About page. Now, you'll notice here that we have the first name and last name. Now, we don't exactly know the email schema, but we can figure that out pretty easily. So, first of all, you can just look on their website and see if they have any emails on their website, and that could clue you into how they're using their email schema. So it could be first name dot last name, first letter of first name dot last name, and so on. What I like to do is come to this website, phonebook.cz, Now I'm going to use a generic domain here because obviously Phishing Inc. is not a real company, so there's not going to be any records in there. I really like Bethesda Game Studios, so I'm going to put in their website right here and click submit, and you'll see it will return a bunch of public email addresses for them. So you can see these are typically first name dot last name. So I'm going to go ahead and copy all these. I'm going to go ahead and put these in just a text file. The next thing we can do is we can come to their LinkedIn. So if your real company has a LinkedIn, which they probably do, you can come to their jobs page, see if they have any opening jobs. Sometimes there will be recruiters who work here and so on. And then you can come to their people page, and their people page is going to have every single member on LinkedIn who says that they're working at Bethesda. So this is super useful, but we don't want to come through here and manually type, first name dot last name of every single employee. That would just take way too much time. So there's this awesome tool on GitHub called Crosslinked, and Crosslinked will essentially do some searching for you, look for emails, and also go to LinkedIn and generate that entire list for you. So all you need to do is clone the repository and install Python 3, and then install the requirements that Crosslinked requires. And then all you need to do to run it is type Python 3 crosslink.py -f and then give it the format. So for example, ours is first name dot last name. If your company email schema is last name dot first name, you can just switch these two and then the company name. So I'm going to go ahead and run this, and this is going to go through and search for public emails for Bethesda. In your case, it would be your target company. Now you can go ahead and while that's running, read through some of the other things that Crosslink does. It's an awesome tool, and it takes a little while to run, so I will get back to you when it is done running. Great, now that it is done running, it takes about 5 minutes, and depending on the size of the company that you're targeting, it will take more or less time. So you can see that it has spit out this names.txt file. So if we go ahead and cat that out, you can see there's just a ton of different emails that Crosslinked has gathered for us. Now, we also gathered our own names, and we want to go ahead and add those just so we have a complete set of all the publicly available names. So you can go ahead and copy the names that you got from phonebook.cz and paste them in here. Go ahead and save that. Now the last thing we want to do to generate our target list is we want to cat out that names.txt file, and we want to sort them, and basically we want to get rid of all the duplicates. So we just need to run this sort command and then make sure we only have unique ones in there, and then put that into a namesfinal.txt file. So you'll cat that out, namesfinal.txt. And now we should have all the names of all the people who work at our target company in alphabetical order and without any duplicates. So later on in the course, we'll be able to use something like this to input into GoFish, and that will be our target list. One of the most important things to know when running a phishing campaign is how to not get sent to spam filters. So I'm going to very quickly go over how to bypass spam filters, what to do, what not to do, and I'm also going to talk about what time has been successful for me when I'm sending a phishing campaign. So the first thing to think about is, what is a spam filter? So a spam filter is not really there to catch phishing links. A spam filter is there to stop spam from getting into your inbox. Now it's true that most phishing campaigns are spam. Most phishing campaigns aren't targeted, and they're sent to 2-3 million emails all at once. That is spam, so that should be picked up by spam filters. And I think that you can expect them to pick that kind of phishing attempt up. However, a targeted phishing campaign is not spam. If I send a targeted phishing campaign to 3 people at your company, I wouldn't expect a spam filter to pick that up because it's not spam. With that being said, there are a few pitfalls when it comes to sending phishing emails, so I want to go over how to make sure that your phishing campaign doesn't land in a spam folder. So the first rule of not landing in a spam folder is just keep your email simple. Keep it 2-3 sentences and say, hey, we detected that someone is trying to log into your account from Moscow. Can you check it out here? And then put the phishing link. If you want, you can use something a little more complex and add maybe an email footer, but I wouldn't use any templated language that you find online. That has been sent by many other people, and that will likely get you flagged as spam. Second, don't copy Microsoft's emails or Google's emails or any official email that is sent from any company has probably been sent before and has probably been tagged as spam. So if you send an email that says unusual sign-in activity and it looks exactly like Microsoft's, Microsoft is probably going to send you straight to the spam folder. Next up is you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot with over-testing. So what over-testing is when you really don't want your email to get sent to spam when you send off your phishing campaign. So you test and test and test and test, and then all of a sudden you're not allowed to send email anymore because 99% of the email that you've sent from your phishing domain has been marked as spam. I've had AWS just unverify my domain and revoke my sending privileges, so I can't send any email. Next up is the topic of whitelisting. Whitelisting is essentially when you sign a contract with a company to do a phishing engagement, you may say, hey, add our phishing domain to your whitelist so that none of our emails will land in spam. Now, I think that in a perfect world, this is good, but unfortunately, we don't live in a perfect world. And if you phish a bunch of users from a company and you get on a call with their CEO, it's really hard to describe how much of a risk phishing is if they say, well, the only reason you were able to phish our users is because we added you to our whitelist. You wouldn't have been able to do this otherwise. At that point, you're kind of fighting a losing battle. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about timing your phish. This will be super quick. The first thing to note is that this is highly subjective on your environment, and you also really need to know about your client and a little bit about how their job works. If everyone is in the office, I don't think it's a very good idea to send a phishing email when everyone might be in a team huddle or they might be talking to each other, because the last thing you want is to send an email and everyone's phones go off and they look at it and they all look at the IT administrator who supposedly just sent them an email who's standing right next to them. So what's worked best for me is sending an email at around 6-7 p.m. right when people are getting home, making dinner, and they check their phone to see, oh, I got an email from our IT administrator. The last thing they want to do is go in and investigate. They just want to get this off their mind as quick as possible so that they can enjoy their time off. One tool I want to introduce you to is called Tmux. Now, what Tmux has done for me in the past is it's allowed me to save my engagement data even if I lose power, if I lose internet. Any of those problems can be solved with Tmux. Now, what Tmux allows you to do is save your session inside of an SSH instance. So what that means is if I run, say, the Evil Engine X program, you can see it's running, but if I close my terminal and I reconnect back to my SSH session on my Amazon EC2 instance, you'll see Evil Engine X is no longer accessible to me. So if I go back into the Evil Engine X directory and I run it again, you can see that the only way for me to use any other part of this terminal or do anything else on this machine is to exit. But say I need to do other things on the machine, or my power goes out, or something happens, there's no way for me to keep Evil Engine X running. So what Tmux allows us to do, if I clear the screen, and I just type Tmux, you'll see down here this little bar has popped up that just says bash. Now what this does is it allows me to run commands in specific sessions. So if I run the Evil Engine X program, you can see it starts up like normal. But if I want to disconnect from this, all I have to do is press Control B, and then you press the corresponding key for the command you want to run. So I want to disconnect from this session, so I press D, and you'll see our Tmux session says detached. Now what that means is our Evil Engine X program, or really anything running inside our Tmux session, is still running in the background. So if I disconnect from this terminal, I close it down completely, I relaunch it, and I SSH back into my EC2 instance, you'll see at first it looks like I'm just at the default screen and I was back in the situation I was when I first started. But if you type tmux ls, you can see this session 0 is still running. So if you type tmux attach -t and then the ID of your session, you will reattach to that session. So you can see when you run programs inside of Tmux, they stay persistent no matter where you're connecting from. So say I want to connect from a desktop at work, or I want to connect from my laptop at home, and I want to check the status of my phishing campaign, I can do so using Tmux.